You just got paid. For about 6 hours, you feel like a different person. You open a shopping app, you add something to your cart you didn't need yesterday, you tell yourself you'll start saving next month. You already know how this ends. But here's the strange part. This isn't a willpower problem. It isn't a discipline problem. It's a 100,000-year-old survival instinct, and it's still running in your brain right now, today, every time you look at your bank balance. Your ancestors never had a bank balance. They had food, and food rotted. There was no refrigerator on the savannah. There was no vault to lock away extra meat from a kill. If you were a hunter-gatherer 20,000 years ago and you brought down a large animal, you had two choices. You could try to keep it all for yourself, watch it spoil within days and gain nothing, or you could give most of it away immediately. Think about how radically different that is from your life right now. Everything around you is built to be stored. Food sits in a freezer for months. Money sits in an account for decades. Even your career is treated as something you build up slowly, brick by brick, for a payoff 30 years away. None of that existed for most of human history. For roughly 95% of the time humans have existed as a species, there was no long-term storage of anything. Whatever you had, you either used it now or you lost it. That single fact shaped almost everything about how your brain handles resources today. Almost everyone chose to give it away. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent years studying the Zhu Huanzi-san people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living a hunting and gathering lifestyle when he arrived in the 1960s. What he documented reshaped how scientists understood early human economies. Meat from a large kill was shared across the entire camp, often within hours. Nobody hoarded it. Nobody built up a private reserve. The surplus moved outward, immediately to everyone nearby. Why would evolution favor giving away your hard-earned resources instead of keeping them? Because hoarding meat was pointless. It would spoil in the desert heat within a day or two either way. But sharing it did something hoarding never could. It built a debt. If you fed the camp today, the camp fed you tomorrow when your own hunt failed. This wasn't generosity in the modern sense. It was a survival strategy. Anthropologists call it reciprocal exchange, and it functioned like a biological insurance policy spread across every person you knew. Your brain evolved inside that system, not a system of savings accounts and long-term investment, a system where resources didn't last, where hoarding was often impossible, and where your real safety net was other people, not stored wealth. This is the part modern life never accounts for. You are using a brain built for a world with no shelf life to navigate a world built entirely around shelf life. Money doesn't rot. It doesn't spoil in the sun. It can sit in an account for 40 years and grow instead of disappearing. Nothing in your evolutionary history prepared you for an object that rewards you for not using it. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, working alongside Amos Tversky, spent decades studying exactly how human decision-making breaks down around exactly this kind of mismatch. Their research on what they called prospect theory showed something counterintuitive. People don't evaluate money in absolute terms. They evaluate it relative to a reference point, usually the present moment, and they weigh potential losses far more heavily than equivalent gains. A future benefit like retirement savings feels abstract and uncertain. A present moment want feels immediate and real. Your brain isn't miscalculating. It's calculating exactly the way it was built to, using a formula optimized for a world that no longer exists. There's a second layer to this, and it goes even deeper into your neurology. Economist George Ainslie studied a pattern he called hyperbolic discounting. In simple terms, humans don't devalue future rewards at a steady, predictable rate. We devalue them sharply, almost violently, the moment they're not immediately available. Offer someone $100 today or $110 in 1 month, and most people take the 100 today, even though waiting is the objectively better deal. But offer that same choice for a year from now versus a year and 1 month from now, and most people happily wait the extra month. The math is identical, the psychology is not. Immediate rewards hijack a different part of the brain than delayed ones do. Think about what that means for saving money. Your paycheck arrives today. Your retirement is decades away. Your brain isn't weighing these two things on a fair scale. It's weighing an immediate, vivid, tangible reward against a foggy, distant, almost imaginary one. Of course, the vivid one wins. It was built to win. For most of human history, distant rewards genuinely weren't guaranteed. You might not live to see them. Planning 40 years ahead wasn't wisdom. It was often wasted effort in a world where the median lifespan was a fraction of what it is now. Here's where it gets even stranger. Richard Thaler, another economist working in this same space, documented something he called mental accounting. People don't treat all money the same way, even though a dollar is a dollar no matter where it comes from. A bonus at work gets spent differently than a regular paycheck. Money won gambling gets spent more freely than money earned through labor. Thaler's research showed that humans build invisible mental categories around money, treating each one with different rules, even when logically there's no difference at all. This isn't irrational in the way it first appears. It's a leftover mental shortcut from a world where different types of resources genuinely did have different practical values. Meat you could eat today, a tool you could keep, a favor someone owed you. These were not interchangeable in the ancestral world, and your brain still treats money the same fragmented way, even though modern currency erased those distinctions completely. So when you feel that pull to spend the moment money arrives, that isn't a personal failing. That's ancient hardware running in a modern operating system it was never designed for. Something changed roughly 10,000 years ago, and it's worth pausing on because it shows this problem isn't purely ancient history. It's the story of your own species slowly, awkwardly, learning to handle a new kind of resource. When agriculture emerged, humans built the first granaries, the first structures ever designed purely to store surplus for later. Archaeological evidence from early farming settlements shows something telling. The very first stored surpluses in human history also produced the first recorded property disputes, the first evidence of organized theft, and some of the earliest signs of wealth inequality between households. Storage was new. Nobody's brain had evolved for it yet. Anthropologists studying this transition describe it as one of the most disruptive shifts in human social history, arguably more disruptive than the Industrial Revolution that came thousands of years later. Your brain has had roughly 400 generations to adjust to the idea of stored wealth. It had over 10,000 generations to adjust to the idea of immediate sharing. Guess which instinct is winning? Now here's the twist inside the twist. The very same instinct that makes saving feel unnatural also explains something else about modern life that seems completely unrelated. It explains why financial stress feels so deeply physically threatening, even when no immediate danger exists. When your ancestors ran short on food, that wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was a direct threat to survival, and their stress response evolved accordingly, flooding the body with cortisol, sharpening focus, preparing for immediate action. That stress system doesn't know the difference between an empty stockpile of food 20,000 years ago and a red number in a banking app today. Your body responds to a low bank balance the same way it would respond to an empty stomach in the wild. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy, known for her work on the evolution of human cooperation, has pointed out that human survival was never really an individual project. It was a group project built on networks of mutual obligation. Your nervous system still expects that network to exist. When you feel isolated with a financial problem, some ancient part of your brain interprets that isolation itself as dangerous, on top of the money problem. This is why financial anxiety so often feels disproportionate to the actual numbers involved. It's not really about the number. It's about an ancient alarm system built for scarcity and community, going off inside a world of abstract digits and social distance that didn't exist when that alarm system was designed. So what do you actually do with this information? You can't rewire 100,000 years of evolution by tomorrow morning. But understanding the mismatch changes something important. It shifts the story from something is wrong with me to something is outdated in me. Modern behavioral economists building directly on Kahneman, Thaler, and Ainslie's research have found that small structural changes work far better than sheer willpower, precisely because they route around the ancient wiring instead of fighting it directly. Automatic transfers into savings the moment a paycheck arrives remove the decision entirely before the present moment brain even gets a vote. Framing long-term savings as protecting your future self, almost as if that person were someone else you're responsible for, taps into the same reciprocal instincts that once bound hunter-gatherer camps together. You are not overriding your ancestral programming. You are redirecting it toward a different target. There's research suggesting this reframing works better than it has any right to. Psychologist Hal Hershfield ran studies showing people who were shown age-progressed images of their own future faces save significantly more money afterward than people who were not. The mechanism appears to be almost embarrassingly simple. When your future self feels like a stranger, your brain treats their financial needs the way it would treat a stranger's needs, which is to say, barely at all. When your future self feels vivid and real, something closer to the old reciprocal instinct kicks in, the same instinct that once made you share meat with a neighbor because you knew you'd need their help eventually. You're not fighting your evolutionary wiring in that moment. You're finally giving it a target it recognizes. This also explains why community-based financial tools tend to outperform purely individual ones. Lending circles, found in cultures across the world under names like Tandas in Mexico, Susu in West Africa, and chit funds in South Asia, work by pooling small contributions from a group and rotating a lump payout among members. Economists studying these systems have found they often produce higher completion rates than individual savings plans, precisely because they borrow the ancient logic of mutual obligation. You show up not just for yourself, but because the group is depending on you, and you are depending on the group. That is almost a direct echo of the hunting camps Richard Lee documented decades ago, just wearing modern clothing. There's a strange kind of relief in that. You were never broken, you were never lazy or weak or bad with money in some fundamental sense. You were running software built across hundreds of thousands of years for a world of spoiling meat, uncertain lifespans, and tightly bound communities, and you're trying to run it inside a world of compound interest, 40-year retirement horizons, and screens that separate you from almost everyone you depend on. The next time you feel that pull to spend the moment money lands in your account, remember what's actually happening underneath it. It isn't weakness flickering inside you, it's an ancestor, still awake somewhere in the oldest part of your brain, still trying to keep you alive in a world that stopped needing that particular kind of help a very long time ago.